Playing a published module can be really useful and a lot of fun because the modules have already done a lot of the heavy lifting for you in terms of content creation. However, there's a big divide between having the module physically in hand and having it in a place where you're able to actually play it. So, I'm rjcurrer, and today we're going to talk about my method for preparing a published module for play. The first step to running a pre-published module is to read the whole thing cover to cover. I mean, start to finish, the whole thing. Now, you don't have to read it for a lot of depth. In fact, really, you're just doing a high level kind of sift through of the content to give yourself a reference point. So, you're not trying to soak up all the details. You're not trying to prepare it in one go. You're just giving yourself kind of a big picture view of what's involved in the adventure or in the campaign, depending on how large of a module you're running. So you're just skimming through the sections, getting an idea of how everything fits together and where everything goes, what the beginning is, what the middle's kind of like, climax, possible resolutions, that kind of thing. Just real high level stuff. Because we're going to go back through afterwards and we're going to pick all of it apart so that we have all of the details at our fingertips that we need to run this module effectively and very easily. So to help illustrate our point today, we're going to be using my published adventure module, The Haunting of Scalen's Moor, mainly because it's my intellectual property, which means I can share it with you. I don't have to worry about copyright restrictions for other modules, but the same process applies no matter what to whatever, frankly, to whatever module you're running, whether that's something small and simple like The Haunting of Scalen's Moor, or whether it's something that's sort of kind of world spanning like The Curse of Strahd. When I do this, I work by filling in a template that I created some time ago, and I will share that template. In fact, the link to get your own copy of that Notion template is in the description to this video, so feel free to go ahead and get your copy of it, download it, save it to your own Notion so that you can use it over and over again. And really what I'm doing is I'm splitting up the adventure into a few key sections so that I have the information that I need at my fingertips. So let's take a quick walk through the template, and then we're going to talk about how I fill that out as I work through this process. So first thing we have here, we don't need my code there, is I have my campaign status document, and this is where I'm keeping a high-level summary of what goes on during the sessions of this adventure, because I will actually play from this tracker template. This isn't just for prep. This is for prep and for the actual game itself. And so we're not going to talk much about this today, but it's really just a blank document where I give really just a high-level summary of what happened session by session. The first thing that we have on here beyond that, and what we'll talk about today, is this DM's dashboard. Now, you don't need to know right away who all your characters are going to be when you start prepping, but part of the preparation process is I record a few key details about the characters in the adventure, and these are the player characters. So, for example, what I will do is I will take each of the player characters and I will put their information in here, starting with their character's name, their armor class. If there's a distinction there, for example, if this is if Cal Riven is a wizard and maybe his armor class is 11 normally, but he has mage armor and that brings it up to a 14. I'll do this 11.14 for the AC. I'll put in the passive perception. I'll record passive insight. I don't worry about passive investigation because I just don't use it very often. But passive perception and passive insight come up quite a bit. I'll put any relevant DCs for a character. And then if they have any particular defenses, I'll record that here. And then I'll put a link to their character sheet here. So in case I need to look up something more in depth. And I'll do that for each and every one of the characters in the campaign. And I'm populating this dashboard, and you'll see that I have it set so it auto links to each of the session notes pages, so that when I'm playing, I can just have one sheet up at a time. All right, so yeah, just filling this in for everybody. And, for example, for the defenses, if somebody was, say, resistant to like fire or something, I would just do R:(fire. This is just real high level kind of notes for me, so that as a DM at a glance, I know what my player characters are dealing with. All right. Same kind of thing for, if they have advantage against being charmed. If they've got more than one thing, I'll list them all out here too, like immunity to magical sleep, that kind of deal. All right, so I'll fill that in once I know who all the player characters are going to be. That might be at the beginning of my prep. That might be near the end of my prep. That might be somewhere in the middle. It doesn't really matter, but I always make sure that I fill that in. The session notes section, again, is going to be more along the lines of what you fill out while you're actually running the game. And this is where I will keep my notes session by session. And I have a template in here for that as well. So, for example, you open that up, and this is my session notes template where I have my DM dashboard linked here so I can see everything at a glance that I filled out. I have the in-game date, the end date of the session, any weather that might be going on in the world for continuity. I keep a couple notes, like party speed, dungeon pace, fast pace through a dungeon, raid pace, depending on the kind of thing that we're working on. And then the session notes here is where I will literally type out my notes while we play. This is where I just keep those very loose, very free-form notes that I'll use to populate the campaign status document later. And I'll also label it with a segment. So, for example, if we were playing something that's a narrative campaign, like Lost Mine at Phandelver, right? Like, I will record what chapter we're in up here as part of the segment. The session date where the session takes place, I'll put that in there. And then whatever our planned next session date is, I'll put there as well, just to keep it simple for myself. So again, this document has everything that I need in it. I can check it out as a glance, and it becomes a living thing throughout the campaign that I'm filling in and updating as we go. And then I have this table, this database of session notes that I can pull from and search through as I need to. The next bit here is our dramatis personae. So this is going to be the important NPCs. And we're going to talk about in a minute here how I break down the NPCs. But this is a major part of the prep where I'm taking key NPCs that will appear within the next session or two. I'm not trying to do the whole adventure at once, typically. Really trying to just take this in bites. But who is going to be important and it pops up kind of right away, or will pop up in the next session, or maybe the session after that, to give myself a little bit of runway. And we'll break that down here momentarily. Same kind of thing for the quest tracker. This is where any quests that might be coming up get populated, and then I mark how the PCs are moving through them, whether that quest has been accepted and it's in progress. If it's done, I'll mark the outcome, whether it was successful or a failure or something in between, that kind of deal. The factions, again, just like the NPCs, I'm breaking those down here. And then I am, but I'm not getting too ahead of myself. I'm really focusing on what's immediate, what's going to be in this session and what's going to be in the next session is really my target, my sweet spot, because I don't want to do a lot of extra work. ahead of time if I don't have to. Now, I will say that being said, that's a lot easier when you're running a narrative campaign. You know, for example, Lost Mine of Phandelver, it's very simple to kind of know what's coming up when, because it's a pretty linear adventure. There are obviously places where the characters can branch off and kind of do their own thing, but it's for the most part the way that it flows, and it flows very naturally in a first then this then that kind of order, which makes it a lot easier to kind of do these things in early chunks. If you're doing something that's a little more sandboxy, like Curse of Strahd, well, sometimes that's going to take more prep, and you're going to have to prepare larger chunks of the adventure at once, because you just don't know which way your characters are going to go. You'll get a better sense as you start to play, and you can ask your players, hey, great session, guys. Where do you think your character's gonna head next time? You can toss that kind of question out at the end of a session, and so they can give you a little bit of information so that you can prep. You can even tell them, hey, for my own preparation purposes, where are you guys planning on going next? Players want you to be successful because you want them to be successful. So, they'll give you that information. So we'll talk about how to break down factions here in a little bit. And then again, background events here as well. This is where I keep track of things that are going on with sort of behind the scenes, without the characters really being aware of them. But so that I'm aware that they're going on, so that I can kind of narrate the effects that come out of that. So these are all things that I fill out before an adventure, like before we begin the adventure. Let's go ahead and start talking about the NPCs. So what I'm doing for that is I'm going through and I'm finding major NPCs, ones that are important to the story, right? Like Grogwin in this, for example, is a significant NPC. And so I'm going to go to where his information is in here. And that is down in the appendix. It's right here. And I'm going to use that to populate the information that I need about him. So I put his name here. I might tag him if I know he's going to be an ally or an enemy or friendly or hostile or what have you. We don't know that yet, so I will hold that off. And then once the characters interact with Grogwin and that is answered, I will fill that in during play. But in the meantime, I'm going to come over and I'm going to hit this universal NPC template. Now, you've probably seen me use a number of different NPC templates on this channel, and there's no right one. It's whatever makes the most sense for you. When I am writing an adventure from scratch, I tend to use a different template than this. Because I will try to get deeper into a character's motivations and their belief structure, so that I can really understand what kinds of decisions they might make. But when I am breaking down an adventure from a module, I will use this template because it gives me play points. It gives me key points that I can use to role play much easier. So what we're doing is we're just filling in each section. So this first bit is a summary, is a one-sentence summary of Grogwin with stat block if there's one available. And so I'm just pulling that from the adventure. And it's nice when the adventure is kind of broken up in a way that lends itself to this organization, or I should say the description of the NPC is broken up in a way that lends itself to this organization. But sometimes you kind of have to distill this information from whatever information you're given. And if you don't know the answer to something, don't worry about it. Leave it blank for the time being. You'll figure it out while you play. So I start with that sort of one-sentence description that's just a very high level, who are they kind of thing. Then I go to their agenda. This is, what do they want in this adventure? And that may be a ambition in terms of being something that's a little open-ended. It might be something that is a little more concrete and that can have a definable answer. In this case, we're talking about Grogwin's life pursuit, because he doesn't really have a Uh, he does not have an agenda that really affects the players for the most part. He does, however, have a goal that affects the players. He's got a very short-term thing that affects them, and that is he wants to acquire new reading material. And the difference between an agenda and a goal is an agenda is pretty much what he is about, what is the core want of his being. A goal is what is an objective that will get me closer to that core want. So every character that everybody that the NPC that the player characters run across is going to have an agenda of some kind, and they may or may not have tangible goals. Continuing on, I'm going to jot down any notes about their appearance so I can maintain some level of continuity. So usually there's a description of an NPC's appearance, even if it's just a detail or two. You don't need a lot here. A sentence or two is more than enough. In fact, keeping this rather minimal is usually better because it's going to be easier to remember. And your character, your players are not going to remember a paragraph worth of description. You can spend all kinds of time describing eye color and hair color and the curve of someone's cheek and how tall or short or whatever they are. The players are going to remember one or two interesting details about them. They're not going to remember a whole lot else. So give them an impression, a physical impression, and that's really all that you need there. Mannerism is for you. That's to help you role play this character. So again, short and sweet is what we're looking for here. Something that can give you a sense of the character and even if it makes it a little caricature-y, right? So, for example, Grogwin usually answers questions with only a grunt or a stare, and so that gives me something I can do to roleplay him. Now, Grogwin is not a terribly complex character in the context of this adventure, and so he has one core value, and so that's all we need for this. This is one ideal, right? So when you're playing D&D modules, for example, sometimes they'll list down ideals and bonds for characters. Those are the core values. That's what we're talking about here. Those are those fundamental beliefs that drive the character. And you want to know those because they're going to help guide the decisions that character makes. They're going to help show you what choices that character will make when there isn't a prescribed answer to a particular interaction already. So, for example, we know that Grogwin is all about knowledge, and so anything that gets him more knowledge is something that has value to him. Anything that provides him no new information is meaningless to him, and that's a guiding star when we're role-playing him. But again, short and sweet, sentence or two is really what we're looking for. For characters where you are anticipating some high RP, some high roleplay, a misbelief is really good. Grogwin is a almost purely RP character, and so we have a misbelief for him. And that isolation can bring enlightenment. And you'll notice that there is no misbelief listed out here. This is something that we're distilling from reading about this hermit character and fitting that in as needed. General attitude, again, is kind of their baseline mood. This is, again, another RP bit for you, something that you can use to more easily role play them and just kind of slip into that character. Background can be a slippery slope. You really just want to list out pertinent background, things that really matter. For example, if I was doing this for Strahd, I would talk about his love of Tatiana, who is now reincarnated as Irina. I would talk about his relationship with his brother Sergei, and his mother and father, and how he came to rule Barovia. But I would just make like a sentence for each. I wouldn't go through the whole Strahd deal and just write pages and pages and pages. But even still, I would go through and I would either highlight or I would bold key elements that I really need to stand out so that at a glance I can look at these and go, oh yeah. Grogwin's been out here for 20 years. He's communing with the wilds. He knows about Scalen's haunting, but he mostly ignores it. Like, that gives me the key points. The rest is just filler. Well, I should say the rest is embellishment information. So short and sweet. Again, the shorter you keep this stuff, the easier it's going to be to use while you actually play. And that's the point, right? We're building something that we can use as we play. So the key information is similar. We're just writing out important things that this NPC knows. And for a lot of NPCs, this may be one bullet point. Grogwin has a lot of information, so he has 5 bullet points. But, it is not atypical for an NPC to have one bit of useful information. I would say that if an NPC has no useful information, they may not be an important NPC, and they may not be worth you spending the time to prep for them. FYI, you'll have to make that decision in terms of what qualifies as an important NPC. But that's one of my metrics for it, is if the characters have nothing to gain by interacting with this NPC, they're not important to me. But that's what we're doing. We're doing that for each of the characters in the adventure, and just kind of working through a session, well, I should say 2 sessions at a time, a session ahead at a time. So, since this is a relatively short adventure, runs in 2, 3, maybe 4 sessions, depending on your group, then we're really going to go ahead and prep our 2 major NPCs here, and that's Grogwin and that's Scalen. And so we're going to use that same universal NPC template, and we're filling it in just as before. So we're scrolling down to his description here. We've got Vornbrunn Scalen, and we're working through, we're taking the information we have about him, and we're putting it into our tracker here. Again, this one is laid out nicely and neatly for this style here because, well, I created them both, so there's some continuity. I try to make it easy on myself. But the module that you're running, it may not be as clean, and so you may have to do some more picking apart than this. But the process is still the same. 1 sentence description, their agenda. In this case, Scalen doesn't have a goal out of the gate. He has an agenda. He wants to exterminate all living sentient creatures in his moorlands, but he doesn't have action items for that yet. He may develop them as you play the game, and then we would add goals to this list. And so we're gonna hit that sentence of appearance. Same kind of deal for mannerisms. Again, here he's not a high RP character, and so he has got 1 core value. He's got 1 ideal. We don't need more than that. Domination. It's his divine right to dominate all within his realm, or at least he believes that. Now, I included misbelief for him because I think it's a nice flaw for him. He believes that he's superior to everyone and everything in every way, meaning he might be easily tricked. His hubris might let the characters, guide him into a trap of some kind. And so I put that in there because that's an important thing for me as a DM to think about. But again, that's something that I'm distilling from the information here, that I'm not just pulling and copying and pasting. I'm thinking about this character as I read about them and realizing that he is vain and arrogant and believes that he is the best in all things. And that's a big flaw. But same deal for general attitude. Background. Here is a background that's a little bit longer. You can see that, there's a fair amount of detail in here. There's a little bit of narration. And you can copy that whole thing if you want. And, sometimes it's easier to just kind of copy paste and then go through and highlight, And if you do, there's nothing wrong with that. But just know that the more you put in here, the harder it's going to be to find the information that you're looking for when it comes to game time. So if you can reduce something down to its bare bones, then do that. And I will say that AI summaries can be really useful for this kind of thing. It can make it go by, it can make distilling information very quick. You still want to make sure you read over them to make sure it's accurate and it didn't minimize things that need to be highlighted, but it can be very helpful. But Scalan is one example of a character who has just a little bit of useful information. Information the characters are unlikely to get out of him, but things that he is aware of that tells you what he knows and what he doesn't know about his situation. And so, we have 2 bullet points for him here, and that's a lot for a character that's pretty much just the boss fight, a character who is likely going to be a combat encounter and perhaps not much else. So that's what we're doing for each of the major characters. Now, there's other minor characters in here, like, there's the warriors from the Quackdrake tribe, Quackdrake clan, rather. There's Ian, the Raven. These are bit characters. They are not characters that I would spend a lot of time preparing, because any interaction with them is going to be passing. It doesn't need to be deep. Though, if for example the characters bond with Ian the Raven, well, then I will build Ian out at a later time. But I'm not anticipating that they'll do so out of the gate, so I'm not going to worry about building them out here as an NPC. So the next thing I'll do is I'll go through and I'll find likely quests that the characters might engage in. And quests are pretty simple. I'm just filling out the card here. In fact, they're so simple that I really don't use a template for it. I'm just, in many cases, just writing what the quest is in the subject line here. End the haunting of Scalen's Moor. And if there's more than one step in that quest, then I may write out the task and then break it down into pieces. So in that case, I'll use a heading, task, and the haunting of Scalen's Moor by destroying Vorn, Bryn, Scalen. And because there's a couple steps in that, I'm going to outline those. So we'll say destroy Scalen. Destroy Scalen's Urn. Discover the secret to Scalen's invulnerability. And then I'll say that the reward for that is 100 GP per character. And I'm really just pulling that from the adventure hooks section, which is here. This cleanse the land adventure hook, and the haunting is cleansing the land effectively. And that's what it says is the payout. So I'm just putting this here so it's easy to find. Something I found early on as a DM is that characters would accept the quest. We'd spend a couple sessions on it. Then they get to the end, and then it'd be like, all right, ready for the payout. And then they wouldn't remember what they were owed. I'd have to go look it up, and it wasn't always in a convenient place. And so I found that making a note of that where it's easy to find was really, really useful. So I use this sort of Kanban board style organization here so that, I can write all the things that are likely quests that the characters can go on. And then when they accept those quests, I can put them on progress. When they're done, I can move them here. I can mark the outcome as either they gave up on it, they completed it, they failed it. So we have the answer to that. I can move that anywhere in between. Now, for something that's a little simpler, for example, this other hook here is pretty much to find the a magical item. In this case, we'll say the bracers of defense here. So we're just going to say find bracers of defense. Characters don't have to know that they're searching for the bracers of defense. You know they're searching for the bracers of defense. And because that's the goal right there, that's all there is to it, we're just going to say reward is the bracers of defense. They are their own reward. That's all we need for that. It gives us all the information. And those are the two quests that the characters are likely to accept right out the gate. Or they're likely to encounter right out the gate. Now, later on they may decide that they're going to side with the, Quagdrake clan and they're going to try to kidnap Grogwin. Well, then that's a different quest and we can fill that out with this third card here. And we can add as many cards as we need. So as the campaign grows and expands and keeps moving beyond this adventure, we can just keep adding cards to this quest tracker as we need to keep track of all that. Next step is factions. And so very much like NPCs, we are breaking the factions down. The key factions that they're going to run into and they're going to work with, again, in the initial couple sessions. And so let's start with Scalen's Undead. Those are ones that they're going to encounter quickly. And so I'll use this basic factions template. All right, and so this is a description of the faction, leadership, agents, the faction's agenda, their overall goal, and then any faction clocks. What are their immediate action items? So for the description, again, the idea is to keep it really simple here because you want it very easy to use. So we're going to put one sentence in here. All right, we're going to put one sentence of description. The leadership, we're gonna name somebody. In this case, these are Scalen's undead, so he is the leader, and they're undead under the control of the warlord Vornbryn Scalen, who it should say no, they are devoted to destroying the living. So that's what they are. They are evil undead, and their leader is Scalen. Their agents are Scalen's oath sworn, although the characters are unlikely to deal with them. And so these are just the undead who were immediately in contact with Scalen, his faithful henchmen, if you will, right? Their agenda is pretty laid out, pretty clear, but we're going to state it down here just in case. That's to destroy the inhabitants of Dunmater Village. That's the place that we're hoping to defend, or at least that's the place in my version of this campaign that the player characters are trying to protect. Dunmater doesn't actually appear in this adventure document at all, so you can pick whatever you would like there. How are they going about the destruction of the living? Well, you fill that in on your agenda here, but that's part of weaving a module into your own campaign, is creating those connection points sometimes. Inventing the village that needs to be rescued, how, hooking this faction into the path of the players, so they're going to encounter it. So again, we're taking what we've learned from the module and we're distilling it into a useful bit of information, some way that it links into the character's world. And so to that end, we have a faction clock. And we have an easy one. They're getting ready to conduct a raid on Dunmater Village. And faction clocks are things that let me, work in the, stuff that's going to be working on in the background that I can take into account or that I can plan for and move and progress forward or backwards, depending on the character's actions, so that I can narrate the results of those things when the characters come across them. And that'll weave into the background events, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Now, again, we're doing the same thing for the other major faction, and that is the Quag Drake clan. Still using this basic faction template. And there isn't a whole lot about them in this adventure. And so we may not know all the details about them when we start planning, but we're going to go to their section. And that's primarily Area 8. We have the Warband camp. And we just have a little bit of information, they're a warband from the Quag Drake clan that camps in the hollow of the Rocky Cliff Face. All right. We know that they're run off by undead, and we know that the warriors seek a sage rumored to live as a hermit in the moor, but have had no luck. The sage is Grogwin. The warriors won't admit it to the characters, but they intend to kidnap Grogwin, forcing him to serve their chief. All right. So we know that they are a clan of warriors who live in the wilds near the moor. So you know what? That's the description that they get. We know their leader is some unknown chief. Maybe we have to invent him. We know his agents are the warband themselves. We know that the warband wants to gift Grogwin to their chief. And so that suggests that they have got a few tasks ahead of them. They need to find Grogwin. That's their easy faction clock. They need to kidnap Grogwin. That's their medium faction clock. And then they need to transport Grogwin back to their village. That's a hard faction clock. And so these are all things that go on in the background so that, I can be tracking these things. And I can, and this can affect the story. It helps show the players that this is a living world that moves around them in reaction to what they do, but also independent of them, right? So we have these things going on in the background. But again, this is a very simple structure for a faction and easy to run this way. And as we develop and we deepen, and for example, if we have to come up with a name for the chief, well, then we'll go back in here and we'll fill that out once we have figured out the answer to that while we're playing. But the chief may not come up at all during the actual playing of the adventure. So we don't need to worry about it off the cuff. All right, and so now we have put in the major factions here. We have just background events left. Nice and simple. And we already know the ones that are starting. We know that Scalen's undead. Prepare a raid on Dunmater Village. We know that's happening in the background. All right, so we know that that's in progress. We know that the warriors from the Quag Drake clan seek Grogwin. And that's in progress. And we know those things will sit here in progress until they are achieved through the faction clocks. And I'll roll during specific periods of downtime to see if Scalen's undead get closer to conducting their raid while the characters are, for example, taking a long rest. If the Quag Drake clan gets closer to finding Grogwin. Perhaps even before the characters find Grogwin themselves. Because as these things unfold, how exciting would it be if they've already met the warriors from the Quag Drake clan, and then they finally find Grogwin's hermitage, and the warriors appear at the same time, trying to kidnap the hermit. And now, all of a sudden, the players have to choose sides, and that would be in a really exciting moment. And we know whether or not it's going to happen based off of this background event being in progress and these progress clocks moving our factions closer to their goals. And really, this is all that I do to sort of pair apart and prepare a campaign. I will give it a name. But this is all I really do to pair apart and prepare a module in preparation to play it. I mean, it really is that simple, and we're really working it just in chunks, a little bit at a time, so it's not a super daunting process. Now, I play a lot on a virtual tabletop, and so one other thing that I will do sometimes is I will go through and I will break out I will set up the encounters ahead of time, just so that they're kind of prepared and I don't have to do them in the moment. So I will, like in Fantasy Grounds, I will go ahead and create an encounter for each of the major encounters that the players are likely to engage in the next session or two. So for example, if I expect that they're going to get to Area 3, the Sunken Marsh, where they're going to face skeletons or shadows, depending on their character level, I will go ahead and have that prepared out and set up on the map and that kind of thing. So I'll do a little bit of that like mechanical preparation at the very end, but only after I've done all of this kind of stuff. And again, just as I have time to do it, because who knows which way the characters are going to go during any particular session. And there's nothing wrong with taking a beat, pulling your notes out for stat blocks, and setting up an encounter on the fly. It's perfectly natural. Anyway, that's really all there is to it. So I hope you find this method useful. If you want your own copy of that campaign tracker template, you can follow the link in the description of this video to download yours for Notion. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, hit that bell icon so that you never miss a video. And if you enjoy my content and my adventures, come play one with me. Come find me at startplaying.games/GM/rjcurrer and join one of my tables. I would love to get a chance to meet all of you over a game of DnD. So I hope that I'll see you there. But until then, I'll see you here. Thanks for watching.